Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, Secretary of State, thank you very much for being here today. Merci beaucoup de votre présence. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, COP21 is only a few weeks away. Impressive efforts have been made by the French government to have a smooth conference with a successful outcome for all international negotiations. There are, as you know, encouraging signs of massive global commitment, but it's still uncertain to know if the deal in Paris in December will be able to keep the increase of temperatures below the 2% target. As you probably know, ladies and gentlemen, the Nordic countries are often referred to as front runners in terms of emission reduction, and the experience of the Nordics shows that an ambitious green transition and economic growth can go hand in hand. That's why we're delighted to have representatives of the different Nordic countries. Let me introduce you to them first of all. We have Lars Christian LILLEHOLT, who's the Minister for Energy, Utilities and Climate Denmark. You can give him a round of applause. We're very happy to have you here today with us, together with Lars Andreas Lunde, who's the State Secretary, Ministry of Climate and Energy from Norway. Thank you very much for being here. We have the State Secretary, Ministry of the Environment and Energy from Sweden, Nils VIKMÅNG. Thank you. Delighted to have PĽRHALLSSON, who's the Deputy Mayor, Public Works and Environmental Affairs, not of Finland, but of Helsinki. He's not the Mayor of whole of Finland yet, as it says on the board. And also, thank you very much for standing at the last minute, Nina Björk-Jonsdottir, who's the Deputy Permanent Representative here in Paris for Iceland. Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you. As you probably know, ladies and gentlemen, Madame Ségolène Royal, the French minister, will be joining us, we hope, towards the end. She's visiting a lot of things here, but she has promised she will be joining us in about an hour's time. My name is Alex Turner. I'm a European journalist. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this session. We will have some speeches from each of the representatives of the Nordic countries. Then I will come and let you ask them questions, and we will finish the morning hopefully with Madame Royal, who will be here. So first of all, we thought it would be interesting to show you a short film of the way that the Nordic countries have been working together to achieve these different aims, which will come to a head in Paris in a few weeks' time. Let's have a look at the short film about Nordic cooperation.
Way up in the far north, in the northern part of the Northern Hemisphere, live a relatively small group of people on a huge area, enclosed by an even bigger ocean. Thus could the 5 countries of the Nordic region be described: Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland and Iceland, and self-governing Greenland, the Faroe Islands and Åland. But in order to complete this picture, we should add that 26 million people live here. People who have created an economy that swings in and out of the 10 most successful economies in the world. Here we live through long, cold and dark winters, sometimes illuminated by the northern lights, but also in the summer by the light of the midnight sun, a light that enriches our pastures and forests, and that lures us out into a nature that is sometimes wild, sometimes friendly and inviting. Throughout time, this has taught us to care for nature's resources, and in modern time, concentrate a great deal in finding innovative resources for a sustainable development.
We cannot choose between either the environment or economic development. We have to find ways to reconcile the two.
The Nordic countries have lived in peace with each other for more than 200 years. That is unique. At an early stage, strong and committed individuals joined together in democratic and social movements and created what we now call the Nordic model, a welfare society with fair apportionment. After the end of the Second World War, a Nordic cooperation was begun that even then supported the freedom of movement between Nordic countries, and gave us the beginnings of a common labour market with equal social rights. This now means that whoever is born in or comes to any of the Nordic countries can study, work and make a career in all of the Nordic countries. Equality gives everyone the possibility to contribute to development. The power of innovation is particularly strong in the Nordic countries, frequently at the very pinnacle of international appraisal. And those that know a little about us are by no means surprised that we concentrate our innovative and creative abilities on sustainability.
There is a need to find a more sustainable solution for electric energy storage, and we believe that in our project that we have created the fundament for a sustainable energy storage based on renewable materials.
With our beautiful nature, good economy, equality and innovation, it is perhaps even so literature and films, the Nordic noir, food, fashion and design that the Nordic region is best known for. And the Nordic cooperation supports this, amongst other ways, by each year presenting prizes to the leading representatives of the creative Nordic countries.
Og vinneren Kim Leina.
That is how we work, by supporting what we have in common and by finding pragmatic and common solutions. Ministers and parliamentarians meet regularly, and at the annual session, decisions are made that contribute to a continual development of the Nordic model.
Кроме того, нас интересует, как в Скандинавии решают вопросы общественной интеграции, не обязательно этнической, может быть, какие-то другие социальные группы. Как вы их включаете, как решаете проблему иммиграции приезжих, как они со своими культурными особенностями уживаются в шведском обществе. Какие вы видите в этом проблемы и как собираетесь их решать?
Researchers say that the most special aspects of the Nordic countries are openness and trust, both between people as well as between the ordinary person and the powers that be. At no time is this more clearly shown than during the summer political meetings in all of our countries. At such times, the representatives of the highest political powers meet everyday people of all ages, talk to each other, discuss, laugh, and experience the meaning of striving for a good and sustainable future. Our countries may be small, but we believe that we become stronger by cooperating with each other and with others. That is our vision and our Nordic perspective.
There we are, ladies and gentlemen, a short introductory film about the Nordic perspective. So it's my pleasure to welcome, for his introductory comments, the Minister for Energy, Utilities and Climate from Denmark, Lars Christian LILLEHOLT. It's nice to meet somebody who's finally taller than me that I present on a stage. There we are. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this important session. The Nordic countries have a lot to offer the world. Today we want to share our green experiences with you, and we hope it will be useful. You all know the challenge. A lot of CO2 emissions come from the energy sector and the burning of fossil fuels. And a global energy demand will continue to grow. The climate problems will become bigger if we don't change to a greener way. Today, I speak on behalf of the Nordic Council of Ministers. I want you all to know that the Nordic countries are working hard for an ambitious climate change agreement in Paris. I would also like to thank France for the great work. We will do all we can to support you. But we must take action now and meet the future energy demand in an intelligent way. That is why we fully support the action agenda. The Nordic countries have a lot to offer. Our countries have a long tradition of ambitious climate and energy policies. We have close partnerships with the private sector, and we haven't given up economic growth and job creation. We now will have a lot of the new energy that is needed in the world. This is a field where we are front runners. Hydropower in Norway and Sweden, geothermal energy in Iceland, both are cheaper than coal and gas. Wind power, which we have a lot of in Denmark, is also becoming much cheaper. Biomass is well-known source in Finland. We also have a renewable power market, the Nordic pool spot. This market is important to integrate our new Apple energy. The International Energy Agency and the European Union want to learn from us here. We are also very good at energy efficiency. The International Energy Agency says that energy efficiency can give almost half of the CO2 savings we need by 2040. But a lot of the efficiency solutions are not happening. We need to place a price on carbon, and we must also include the many other benefits from improving energy efficiency. Today, UNEP published a report on such co-benefits. These include better productivity, public health, job creation, and economic growth. Another important benefit is energy security. I hope you will take a minute to read the report. There are many good cases in it. In Denmark, we also work together with many development countries like China, Mexico, and South Africa. Here we focus on policies and solutions from the Danish energy model. We improve the local energy systems, and we highlight Danish expertise from Danish companies. This helps to open the door to big energy markets. So it is a win-win, both for the climate and for the companies. I hope you will have a very good discussion that will show the world that we want a greener future and all the things the Nordic countries have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think, unfortunately, you have to leave us now, but we were very touched that you should show us your presence at the start of this meeting. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the Danish Minister, who absolutely wanted to be here. We will have a question and answer session later on, and I would like to ask the Danish Chief Negotiator for COP21, Mrs. Mershan Ellen Nielsen, to come on the stage and should be there to answer your questions, but it's important that Denmark should still be on the stage. Thank you very much for being with us. Let's move on now to Norway. It's like the Eurovision Song Contest, with Lars Andreas Lunde, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Climate and Environment. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear fellow political representatives of the Nordic countries, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by crediting France for the leadership that you and EU have shown ahead of the COP21. France has recently passed an ambitious climate and energy law that can be used as a blueprint for many European countries. To a great extent, I believe, because of the perseverance of Minister Royal. Norway presented our INDCs before the COP21 in March this year. In our INDC, we set the same climate targets as the EU for 2030, and we are aiming for a joint fulfillment of the targets together with the EU and its member states. Norway is already a part of the emission trading scheme, the ETS, And now, by our INDC, we also requested to participate in the non-ETS sector for the period after 2020. They were also incorporating the remaining 50% of our emissions. We are grateful for the welcoming response from the EU's side in this, and especially we welcome the statement from the Council of Ministers last month welcoming Norway and Iceland's request for cooperation with the EU. Production and consumption of energy contributes to roughly 2/3 of the global emissions of greenhouse gases. Energy policy and climate policy is therefore closely connected. And renewable energy is key to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. Almost 100% of the Norwegian electricity production is from renewable energy resources, mainly hydropower. Our electricity grid is closely connected with those of our neighbors, enabling an optimal utilization of the electricity production in our countries. As in the EU, the Nordic countries has a long history of regional cooperation. We have been pioneers in renewable energy and liberalization of the electricity markets. This is important for effective handling of the variations in water inflows to the reservoirs from year to year. Variable hydropower is now also essential for the large phase-in of wind power and solar power occurring across Northern Europe. The planned construction of new interconnectors to Germany and the UK will increase Norway's interconnection capacity by almost 50%. In this way, we are contributing to the further integration of markets in Europe and to our common energy security. Today, Norway have about 65% renewables in our energy mix. This is high, the highest in Europe, but Norway must still reduce emissions in all sectors, as all countries have to do. To reduce emissions is a gigantic challenge and requires cooperation between industry and authorities. The EU Emission Trading Scheme, the ETS, is a cornerstone in the climate policies of the EU and Norway. Through a Norwegian public enterprise called Enova, we pursue the ambition to drive forward the changeover to more environmentally friendly consumption and generation of energy, as well as climate-friendly transport. Norway has the world's highest number of electric vehicles per capita. Batteries are making inroads into our shipping industry, with the world's first 100% battery-powered car ferry in operation in February this year. The Norwegian government also pursues broad measures to develop technology for capture and storage of CO2, CCS. It is essential that climate policy also address energy policy issues. Efficient solutions requires regional cooperation. The EU's coherent approach to the energy union, integrating different policy areas and sectors, is important in this regard. Well-functioning and efficient energy markets contribute to achieve our climate goals. We also need to enhance the cooperation between governments and the industry. In the climate negotiations, Norway is arguing for a long-term goal of global climate neutrality by 2050, means zero net emissions. Such a goal would give us and the public a clear directive on where to go, and it would guide future work under the new agreement. It would give private investors the signals they need for the green change. The Nordic countries, as well as other European countries, has the human and natural resources needed for making most out of the clean tech revolution we now see are coming. The industry and private capital must seize the opportunities in the rising new green markets. So by these words, I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, State Secretary. Now let's move on to Sweden, who we have the State Secretary of the Ministry of the Environment and Energy, Nils VIKMÅNG. Thank you very much for being with us. Over to you to explain Sweden's input into the green question.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by thanking the Nordic embassies for organizing this conference on Nordic efficiency. I'm sure we have many energy efficiency fans in the room today, and that many of you during the last years have been battling with colleagues to make them understand the great potential of energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, often referred to the first fuel or highlighted as the megawatt hour you do not need to invest in, is for my government an integral part of the future energy policies. And energy efficiency is more than energy savings. By saving energy, we reduce our energy costs and greenhouse gas emissions, but we also stimulate economic growth, social development, and energy system security, to mention a few. And I believe that you already now can look back and say, energy efficiency made it. Improved energy efficiency in our economies is one reason for why, for the first time, the global emissions last year did not increase while GDP continued to grow. And the IEA shows in their Energy and Climate report this summer the greatest measure for reducing emissions in the future is to improve efficiency in the industrial, residential, and transport sector. But how to unleash this potential? How to accelerate deployment of the right technologies and solutions? First of all, you cannot deal with energy efficiency as a matter separated from other energy issues. You need a system perspective. Whether you develop your city, run an industry, or want to renovate your house, at least if you want to reach the greatest energy savings. The savings are not necessarily in the products you buy, but in the system you assemble. This is in particular true for industrial motor systems, where the optimization of the system opens for the greatest saving potentials. From a local authority's perspective, instead of supporting your citizens to switch to cleaner boilers or lower their temperature in their apartment, look at how you can develop the central heating system. The promotion of a sustainable district heating system in Sweden has helped us to more or less phase out fossil fuels in the heating sector. And the same goes for when a new house is built or an old one is renovated. It is all about putting together the right components and use the right energy sources. But what if you are not the owner of the house or apartment? What incentives does your landlord have? Renovating the existing building stock is often the elephant in the room. This is why the Swedish government now is taking action. From next year and 4 years ahead, we will invest 100 million euros a year in the renovation of multifamily buildings with energy efficiency measures included. Another aspect of taking efficiency measures is that you may give you a surplus which you can sell to others. whether you as an individual generate your own electricity or as a country generate more electricity than what your citizens demand. Like Sweden, moving towards a more efficiency economy will get us a surplus we can export to our neighbors. Speaking on Nordic efficiency, I would like to mention an ongoing project on market surveillance between the Nordic countries called Nordsyn. Nordsyn has proven to be a very clear way how international cooperation complements national efforts. Together, we work to ensure that there is well-functioning market surveillance for the implementation of the eco-design and energy labeling directives. Two directives which are crucial for improving the energy efficiency in the EU. And for its success, market surveillance is the key. We share test results and information regarding 30 to 40 product groups which are covered by the directives. Much more efficient than if we would do everything on our own. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. We are very grateful for having a close cooperation with the other Nordic countries. We all have high ambitions when it comes to energy efficiency and renewables. We also have the responsibility to share our experience and work together with our other countries. But we have to be efficient to avoid a global temperature increase below 2 degrees. We need to accelerate the transition to secure a clean energy future as quickly as possible. Thank you.
State Secretary, thank you very much indeed. We now move over to Helsinki, to Finland, and we have the Deputy Mayor, as I said, for Public Works and Environmental Affairs of Helsinki, PĽRHALLSSON. Thank you very much indeed. I think you have some pictures to show us. You have a presentation.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I'm indeed going to show you some pictures. Thank you. And I seem to be the only one on the panel representing a local government view. And I tried to give you some examples of what we try to do in the city of Helsinki and the metropolitan area. And we try to combine climate goals with business models have a positive impact on the economy, especially on the local level. It should be remembered that the Nordic countries are the most local government-oriented societies in the world, and Finland may be the most local government-oriented one. Local government is responsible for all public services. It's only the police force in Finland that is a national service. Everything else, health, social, education, is produced at the local level. This means that most things happen at the practical level locally. Cities can indeed change the world. National governments legislate, but local governments implement. We try to transform the city in Helsinki from a service producer towards a community, towards openness, towards co-design. It's perhaps symptomatic that when people talk about the city now, they talk about a service production organization, not the community. We try to change that. We try to mobilize the talents, the capacities, the brains of the residents to serve common good. Open data, open participation, co-creation, demo and pop-up culture. Those are some of the concepts that we have tried to harness to achieve those goals. Smart city solutions, which we try to implement in Helsinki, smart transport, smart services and consumer solutions, smart energy systems, give everyone 1 more hour a day. Helsinki is 25 hours, 7 days a week. We're looking into finding the 8th day of the week. Working together is pretty easy in a small country. Finland has a population of 5.4 million people. All Nordic countries are relatively small compared internationally. Universities, state government, cities, residents and companies find it pretty easy to find partners in various projects. On the metropolitan area, we started a program called World Smart Clean Capital, subtitle Intelligent and Sustainable Growth in Helsinki Capital Region. This involves the cities of Helsinki, Espoo and Vantaa, which are the metropolitan area cities, the Ministry of Economy and Employment, private companies and the residents. Here are the smart and clean spearheads. They include low carbon transportation and mobility, built environment with positive impact on the climate goals, smart and sustainable energy systems, smart water-based and wastewater treatment, and these combine in a sustainable lifestyle. And we try to combine economic and environmental benefits in these 6 areas: bioeconomy, waste, energy, digital technology, mobility, and construction. Circular economy is the concept or the framework we're working in. Here are some of the examples of business models within the circular economy concept. Products as a service. One good example is mobility as a service. There are fewer and fewer people who feel necessary to own a car to be mobile. Less than 50% of the households in the inner city center of Helsinki own a car. I don't own a car. It's much easier to use public transport, walk, bike, and if you need a car for a weekend, for example, to see your aunt in other parts of the country, you rent a car or collect one from a carpool. Low carbon transportation and mobility is one of our primary goals. 72% of commuting trips into the city of Helsinki are now being made by public transport. We aim at 90% cut of CO2 emissions by 2020 in bus transportation. Green fuels, biogas and electric vehicles are encouraged. And I already mentioned the mobility as a service concept. We have an opportunity of building whole new parts of the inner city. When we moved our old cargo ports from inner city locations to outside the city, one of the districts we are now building as a state-of-the-art housing and business area is the Kalasatama or Fish Harbour district. We try to make it a smart and sustainable energy system innovation platform for the whole city. Small electricity producers can sell electricity back to the grid. Infrastructure supports electric vehicles. There's electricity storage for local producers of solar and wind energy. Waste collection is organized through an automatic vacuum pipe system. And we try to utilize public and open data to develop smart services. And for the individual, there's a climate pledge that anyone can sign, which offers practical everyday tips for cutting down your personal CO2 emissions. This can be found on the internet. And a small puff for the Slush event, which is a meeting for Eurasian startups and technology talent to meet with international investors, executives, and the media. A two-day event in Helsinki, 11th and 12th November. And this tries to bring together innovation, smart technologies, and investors and the media. This is Helsinki. You're welcome to visit. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Now from Iceland, we're delighted to have Nina Björk Jonsdottir, who's the Deputy Permanent Representative here in Paris. Perhaps a word first of all, because you're replacing at the very last minute your Minister. A word.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I want to convey the greetings and apologies, first of all, from Mr. PÞR_HRALLSSON, the chairman of the Environment Committee of the Parliament, who is also the president of the Nordic Council in 2015, who was supposed to come today and speak. And yesterday it was, we saw that I would have to come instead and speak to you. So I am the chargé d'affaires at the Icelandic embassy at the moment. So it is a pleasure to be in a Nordic-French setting here in Paris. And I want to commend the Nordic Council of Ministers and the Danish presidency for the emphasis that they are giving to a joint Nordic vision and environmental responsibility in the lead-up to COP21. By acting together, we can make a bigger difference. In just over 6 weeks, the world will gather here in Paris to address the most urgent need or question of our time: how to tackle climate change and reduce emissions. It is of utmost importance for our planet and for the future generations that we are successful in Paris. And countries around the globe are looking for ways to reduce emissions and continue to grow and prosper at the same time. Iceland has a story to tell that we are certain can be useful for other countries in this quest. Today, all stationary energy in Iceland is renewable, 100%. That is to say, more or less everything is powered by renewable energy except transport on land, air and sea. Although we are now looking at reducing emissions in that sector as well. And I have good news. It's not only good for the environment to invest in renewable energy, it's also good for business. Every decade, so every 10 years, geothermal used for space heating alone saves the Icelandic people the equivalent of 1 year's GDP. So we're saving great sums of money that we can invest instead in the welfare system, in schools or other good things because of this investment in renewable energy. So our message to other countries is, yes, you can transform your energy system, it's good for the environment, and the economic benefits are huge. In Iceland, we transformed our energy system in only 1 generation, from fossil fuel to hydropower and geothermal, harnessing the heat under our feet, in the second case, for geothermal. And what a blessing it is for a country called Iceland, le pays de glace, to have all this warmth underneath. Every country must use the energy sources at hand. The solution to reducing emissions will not come from one single source, but from a mixed portfolio of existing and new technologies, such as biofuels, solar, wind energy, etc. Geothermal energy will be part of the solution, and it is available in many more countries in the world than people tend to think. Iceland is now working with other partners on how to advance the use of geothermal energy. The unused potential of this energy source is huge worldwide. So we feel it is important and our responsibility to share this message. For almost 40 years, Iceland has, through the UN Geothermal Energy Program that we fund and run under the auspices of the United Nations University, been promoting the use of geothermal energy and has trained more than 500 geothermal experts from more than 40 countries. Icelandic companies have also been participating in geothermal projects in Kenya, China, Nicaragua, Djibouti, and many other parts of the world. Currently, Iceland is working with the World Bank on developing the use of geothermal energy in East Africa Rift Valley, covering 13 countries, all the way from Eritrea in the north and down to Mozambique in the south. It is a pleasure that we will be joined here today by Madame Ségolène Royal, the French Minister for Ecology, Sustainable Development and Energy, who recently visited Iceland to study the geothermal use in my country. Her leadership is instrumental in advancing the shared ambition of our countries of increasing the use of geothermal energy. At the COP21, in a few weeks' time, a global geothermal alliance will be launched under the auspices of IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, where countries that share this ambition, such as Iceland and France, will work together. By creating an alliance for geothermal, we intend to gather stronger political support for this technology-specific resource and at the same time create dialogue with the private sector and other stakeholders with the aim to enhance geothermal deployment globally. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, from the gold under our feet to the silver in the sea. The fishing industry is one of the main pillars of the Icelandic economy. For a fishing industry, the fishing industry is one of the main, I'm going to say this again, just to get the message across. The fishing industry is one of the main pillars of the Icelandic economy. For a fishing nation like Iceland, which relies so heavily on resources from the ocean, it goes without saying that responsible and sustainable fisheries and respect for the marine environment are very important. And so at the Nordic Pavilion here at World Efficiency trade show, Iceland is showcasing solutions that Icelandic companies have developed that aim at protecting the environment and reduce emissions as regards the whole value chain of fisheries. That is to say, all the way from the ships catching the fish at sea until the fish is on the plate ready to be consumed. The solutions are based on better utilization of energy resources, reduced oil consumption, better utilization of raw material processing, and more. I urge you to drop by at the Icelandic booth and see for yourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Nina, especially for having stood in at the last minute. I'll come into the audience if you have any questions now. We have about 25 minutes for questions to the representatives of the countries that you've just heard. Just one question from me. I host a lot of conferences and conventions about green issues. Energy efficiency issues, obviously, from what we've heard, ought to be on the top shelf. It seems so obvious. And yet, when you look at what a lot of countries are doing, they are low down on priorities. What would you say were the incentives that are needed, most of all, to persuade different countries, apart from your own and France, to follow your example? What kind of incentives do you think are necessary? Who would like to start? Merchan, yes, please. You have to take a microphone, I think, and speak in. And in the meantime, I will come round, and if you want to ask a question, make a comment, or say anything, please show me so I can give you the microphone. Yes.
Well, I think there's several incentives, but I think it's important to establish to get a global price on carbon, because in the end, I mean, if you are to solve the climate challenge and other environmental challenges, you have to use the market mechanisms. I mean, it has to be more expensive to pollute, to emit climate gases, and most of all, more productive, more profitable to reduce your emissions, and especially more profitable to invest in climate-friendly solutions. So that's why I hope, I mean, in Paris and beyond Paris, we have to move towards a global price on carbon emissions. and of course at the same time also fight subsidies to fossil fuels, because fossil fuel subsidies is opposite of carbon pricing and subsidizing pollution. So I think that, I mean, the basic incentive actually to make it more expensive to pollute, to use the market mechanisms to have, in the end, a global price on carbon emissions.
Anybody else want to comment? Yes, Mashan Elanis.
Is it on? Yes. I very much agree with...
I think in the room, as there's so much noise, if you could put against the skin, so at the
against
chin.
the skin?
Perfect,
okay.
Yes, there we are. We can
close
hear
to
much
the skin
better.
then. I very much agree with what my Norwegian colleague said. I think putting a price on carbon and also phasing out subsidies to fossil fuel play a crucial role. Obviously, it has to be more expensive to use fossil fuels. But also I think it's important that we try to raise awareness of all the related co-benefits we have to reducing emissions and in increasing energy efficiency. And as my minister said, today UNEP, the UN Environmental Programme, just releases a new report highlighting some of those co-benefits. And I think that you have to also take into considerations when you plan and when you implement, and that especially goes as an advice to governments when they do their long-term planning. Thank you.
Okay, from Helsinki.
Yeah, I agree with the sort of international and national incentives and regulations, but at the city level, we can put energy requirements in detailed plans for new areas of construction that are passed by the city council. You can have requirements on passive energy housing, low energy housing, and so on, which is a very efficient way of regulating energy efficiency at the city level. And obviously when you retrofitting existing buildings, and especially city-owned buildings, the retrofitting happens according to strict sort of energy efficiency regulations.
Yes, I also think it's important to show that you can combine economic growth with reducing emissions. And one example of that is that we in Sweden have one CO2 tax, and that also stimulates the alternatives, I think. So you don't have to be afraid to use economic measures here.
So even punitive measures with tax. Can you give us the concrete example? I mean, how much is it, what kind of tax are we talking about? Is it a lot or what?
We have it in the transport sector and also in the industrial sector.
Okay. Any questions? Yes. If I could ask you to introduce yourself each time, it's interesting to know who is speaking. Et si vous voulez poser des questions en français, on peut les traduire, il n'y a pas de problème.
Bonjour, Claude Benayem, je travaille chez BNP Paribas. Je voulais savoir si, d'après vous, le financement des particuliers peut être...
I'll translate it. Do you know that if financing for individuals
could be a great level to follow energy efficiency for residential buildings?
Donc, sur les
for individuals.
Did you understand the question? No. Dites-le en français. Moi, je traite.
D'accord. Je voulais savoir si, d'après vous, le financement des particuliers peut être un levier important en Suède, en Norvège et au Danemark, essentiellement, pour aider à la rénovation énergétique des logements.
Donc les gens payent pour leur propre pour la rénovation, c'est ça. How can we help individuals to finance the renovation of their buildings so that they conform much more to environmental standards? What incentives can we make to help people put money into renovation of their own buildings? C'est ça. And the lady who works for a bank is asking if credit can be associated with this. How can banks help to achieve green objectives. C'est ça. Voilà. Yes. It works.
It's on. Okay. I think that. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think that's a very good question. I think talking about incentives is absolutely crucial. As for Denmark, we have rather high standards when it comes to
I think we'll change the microphone because there's a little bit of. I think this one's something.
Okay, better.
Yep.
And we have done so during the, I think, last 30 to 40 years in cooperation with the private sector, which means that we have been able to agree on standard that is both of a very high quality, while also actually manageable for the sector. So that is one. I think looking at how you regulate the whole sector is perhaps the first and best move. Also, when it comes to banks, I don't have that much of experience with Nordic countries and how or European countries and how banks operate. But as for Denmark, we have developed an financial instrument. We are right now testing it in Mexico, and we hope it can be piloted to other growth economies. Shortly, it's about guaranteeing the expected revenue from increasing energy efficiency when small and middle-sized companies invest in energy efficiency initiatives. So that could be a way to help also the banks and the financial sector actually realizing this huge potential that energy efficiency has.
Anybody else want to talk about how banks can help and the issues of investing in renovation?
Yes, I think there were two questions. First about the role of banks, and then how to create incentives for private property owners to invest in their own houses. To answer on the question on banks first, I mean, I think banks play a crucial role in the green change. I mean, into going into a low emission economy, because there's no doubt that we are facing great big challenges, and we have a need for big investments to get the technology. We need to get the green technology moving, because it's no doubt if we are to solve the climate issue, we have to have massive investments in climate-friendly technology, in climate-friendly industries. And someone has to finance this, and that is the role of the banks. I mean, the states can only create some incentives, but it's the banks and the financial markets who has to finance the green shift. So we as politicians, we have to create incentives, like putting a price on carbon to make it profitable to invest in green technology. But it's the banks and other financial companies who have to provide the finances. So banks play a crucial role in the green shift, in creating green growth. The second question about private property owners. It's important to have incentives for people to invest in energy efficiency in their own homes. I think for new buildings, you need to have regulations in low emission standards, like the EU is doing with the buildings efficiency directives, and we also have similar regulations in Norway. For houses to have to be energy efficient. And you have to remember, a new building will stand there for 50 years, maybe 100 years. So it's important to what you create on investments in energy efficiency today you will be there from tens, maybe 100 years to come. For existing buildings, it's also important to create incentives for people to also have energy efficiency in existing buildings. In Norway, we have a scheme that people can get money from the state, can get a certain subsidy from the state if they invest in retrofitting their own building, changing their windows, investing in heat pumps, solar panels, and other ways to increase the energy efficiency of their buildings. It has until recently been, I mean, you can get a grant from the state from this. From next year, it will also be, you can also have it as a tax incentive. The important is that it should be non-bureaucratic. It should be easy. You just to provide the receipt for your investment, and if it fulfills the criteria, you either get money directly from the state, or you can tick it off on your tax report every year.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming. I'm a student in Sciences Po in European Affairs. My name is Claire, and I have a question. In which dimension could the Nordic cooperation in energy efficiency be a model for the Energy Union launched by the President Juncker in February 2015? So what could be the best advice to the Energy Union looking at what you achieved at the Nordic level? Thank you.
Vast question, yes. What would your advice be?
I think our regional Nordic market together with the Baltic states is one very good example. And I also believe that there are big interest for that from other countries and from the Commission. But I also think that in the Energy Union there is a target that EU will be the #1 in renewables. And here we have a lot of things to contribute with from the Nordic countries. Hydro and wind and also bioenergy is very important. I think 2/3 of all renewables in EU comes from bioenergy, and 70% of that is from biomass. And here we can contribute, I think, with our experiences from the Nordic countries.
Any other things you would like to suggest to Mr. Juncker? Can I ask you a very basic question? Because I've been listening to you. I'm British, but I live in France. I'm very interested because obviously the Nordic countries have a lot of good examples. We've seen them today. You've talked about them. I would like to know why the Nordic countries are often cited as models, why you are actually here today to show us some of the things you've been doing. Is it a cultural thing? Is there something about living in the north of Europe? How do you explain the motivation for your governments and for your citizens to be more involved in questions about the environment? Is it something cultural? And in that case, is it not difficult for other people who live in other parts of Europe, for example, who don't have this culture, to understand that? Is it cultural? Yes, please.
To a certain extent, I think it is. I think if you look at all the Nordic people, I think it's a long tradition in our countries to live close to nature. I mean, Norwegians, we love skiing in the winter. I think maybe other countries in Europe think it's strange. We go far out in the forest in a cold winter day to go skiing, or we go hiking.
Well, it is a little
strange. I think in all Nordic countries have a long tradition that we value outdoor life, that we value our nature very high. So I think for many generations, it's been a quite high environmental consciousness within all the Nordic countries, that we really care about our nature, and I think we also see that in climate change. But I think also other European countries is also, the environmental awareness is coming more and more on their mind as you see the consequences of climate change. When the Netherlands see the water level is rising, and you see floods in Germany and so on. So I think it's a consciousness that is also now more and more also going into other European countries.
From Helsinki?
I think it's a combination of historical things. The main thing, I think, is living in a cold climate, which makes you save energy sort of automatically. And also, I think, typical of the Nordic mentality is a kind of very deeply rooted pragmatism, that you actually want to do things and not just talk about them. And when you combine this with rather small populations, it's perhaps easier to achieve consensus on various goals compared with some more diverse and bigger nations. I think those are some of the issues involved.
Yes, please, from Sweden.
I think that we have a tradition of solving large problems with smart solutions. We had the problem after the oil crisis in the 70s, and then very local municipalities and companies discussed how can we replace the oil with other sources, and then bioenergy became the answer, and then it was not environmental issues at the first time. It was about security issues, but then we have built on that. So I also think the pragmatism is a key line.
And what about Denmark? Is it how long have environment? You get the impression that in all these Nordic countries, like Denmark, that it's been a political issue for a long time. Since when was it a political issue? And what do you think about the cultural aspect of why Danes are concerned about this?
I think as our Nordic friends, we also highly value our nature. We have coast and beautiful beaches, but I think as also the case for Sweden and Denmark, we were more or less forced to change our way in the 70s during the oil crisis, and at that point it was obviously a harsh time. Having lack of access to energy and oil, but it helped us now, and I think that has been the main reason that we now have this green culture, way of green thinking, but also because the politicians and the decision makers, they have been very good at including both citizens, but also regional powers and especially private sector, because right now in Denmark the private sector is one of the main drivers for green development and green technologies, and I think that is something that is due to long and stable framework conditions that have been making it more easier for private sectors to invest in research and development and green technologies.
Nina, it's interesting, you were telling me that Iceland was once considered as an emerging country. Tell us a bit about that and where you think that the impulse for the environmental concerns has come.
Well, I agree with what has been said in the panel regarding the Nordic mentality. I think, we're faced with a harsh climate. In Iceland we have volcanic eruptions, and you have to be really sensible about how you use what is at your disposal, and you have to make sure, regarding fisheries, you have to make sure that it's a source that you can continue to use. You can't, empty all your fish stocks. But what we were discussing earlier was regarding investment in renewable energy, and Iceland, when we started to invest in renewable energy more than 100 years ago. I mean, it started as little projects, one school or one big hospital we heated with geothermal energy, etc. But at this time, we were actually classified as a developing country, because we were up until the 1970s, and I think young Icelanders today, they don't realize this, but up till the 1970s, we were classified by the UNDP as a developing country. But investing in renewable energy really helped us on our way to become, more affluent, better off. It made the economy much more diverse. Attracting industries. Now we're growing vegetables all year round in greenhouses. We have, swimming pools all over the country, etc.
What kind of vegetables do you grow in Iceland?
Tomatoes, paprika, cucumber, but all year round. So heated with geothermal water, and then the electricity comes either from geothermal or hydro. So you can see it in the wintertime. Snow is all over, and then you have a greenhouse.
Icelandic paprika. Okay, right. Could you tell us who you are and your question?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a student at the American University of Paris. And my question is, what recommendations do you have for more widespread cities that are car dependent, where public transportation is not established yet?
So for transport issues, I hosted a convention in Bordeaux last week about intelligent transport systems, and there are some amazing things that are happening all around the world in different countries about the way that the traffic is going to be regulated, that we're going to travel amongst our cities. Do you have any examples then, as this young lady was saying, about traffic issues? Yes, from Helsinki.
In Helsinki, it starts from the master plan of the city. We're now preparing our new city master plan, which is coming to the city council to be passed next spring. And the mobility priorities of the new draft master plans are as follows. First, walking. Second, cycling. Third, public transport. And fourth, cars. And you have to have your priorities clear, because that's sort of what you think about mobility within a city. That actually controls the end result of your city plan. And actually most cities in Europe, and I think big cities worldwide, have been planned around the private car. And the results, you can see, I mean, they're not planned with a pedestrian in mind. They're planned for cars. But there are more and more people now, the world over, who start thinking about what actually is the use or the useful time of a car. In Finland, it's estimated that a typical private car stands in the street as a pile of metal 22 hours a day. And it's only used 2 hours a day. And there are more and more people thinking, is this clever? And more people think it's not clever. And this is where the mobility as a service concept comes in, that mobility is not a pile of metal with 4 wheels. It's a service that you can buy or rent. It's something you use, not something you own. And I think this is where the thinking starts from.
Okay, from Norway.
Yes, I very much agree with my Finnish colleague. I think it's also a very good question. I think the key is to modern city planning, to plan our cities more concentrated, that we don't depend on our cars to go out, that we can either walk to our workplace or bike, or at least when you expand the cities, that you expand according to the existing corridors of subways or railways, so that people can commute without being dependent on their car, using railways, using subways, or using other forms of public transport, or walking or biking. And I think these cities are also more nice to live in. I mean, if you look at the most livable cities in Europe today, I mean, the cities where you can walk, where you can bike, where you don't see the city traffic. And you see some good examples, both in the Nordic countries and in Europe. I mean, Copenhagen is a good example of city development to make a really living friendly city. And we see that cities also in Europe, we have a problem in Oslo and Bergen, our 2 main cities, with the air quality. I mean, we just last week, I think we were sentenced by the European Court to breaking the EU directive on clean air. Because definitely, even in the Nordic countries, at least in Norway, our cities are not healthy to live in. People with asthmatic, with breathing, respiratory problems suffer because of too poor air quality. So I think we have to solve this. And not to mention, on the third world, I mean, the really growing cities in Asia or Latin America, we really see big problems with air quality. And I mean, city planning is crucial to continue with economic growth in countries like China and India. I mean, you have to have city planning, otherwise cities like Beijing and Delhi will just be strangled in their own growth if you don't invest in subways, in railways, in other forms of public transport or good city planning.
It's true. I was in Copenhagen this summer, and I thought Amsterdam was a lot of bikes, but Copenhagen is just absolutely full of bikes. Is this a kind of cultural thing, or was it a particular policy that you decided at one stage, no more cars, everybody on bikes, because it's just bikes everywhere?
Actually, I don't know history of our biking that well, but one main component is protected bike lanes. I think if you go to Brussels or many other cities, I went to Chicago in the spring, and they really want more bikes on the streets, but it's just very difficult when you're almost risking your life every time you jump on a bike. And I think that is something that we have done in Copenhagen. We have prioritized protected bike lanes. Sometimes it made the roads for the cars smaller, but I think that is one of the reasons that you see so many people biking in Copenhagen.
It's true. I live in Paris, and I sold my car 7 years ago, and I just use the Vélib system. I think it's fantastic. It's a beautiful place to bike around. This young gentleman, could you tell us who you are and your question?
I'm a student from an engineering school in France and former student at KTH in Stockholm. So my question is about the developing countries. So Iceland, you told us about your plan with the World Bank about geothermal. What do you plan to do to cooperate with developing countries to tackle the sustainable development goals? Because I believe that it's really important to help them achieve development while answering the questions of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I agree. It's very important now that we help the developing countries to invest in the renewable energy sources that are at their disposal, be it solar or hydro, geothermal, etc. And of course, now with the climate change debate, the COP21, there's a lot of focus on finance, and finance is a very important element of an agreement in Paris. And so with the finance that is becoming available to the developing countries, it's very important that we help them to both invest in renewable energy sources and also to tackle the adverse effect of climate change in their societies. And I think by doing that, we help them in so many different ways. You know, it's you know, of course, it's for development, but also it's good for the climate. It's good for gender equality. You know, if girls don't have to go to pick wood because it's more girls than boys that do that, they're taken out of school. You know, it's always a new wave of thing. It impacts so many different things. And I think as regards geothermal energy, it's very important to help them with the first step, because the exploration and that's the same with hydro. You know, the first steps is quite often very difficult. So now, with all this financing becoming available, we must make sure that we set up mechanisms that can channel the finance in the right direction by using expertise and you know, providing assistance on the ground.
Yes, from Norway and then Sweden.
From Norway, we have a strong cooperation with the tropical forest countries. I mean, that doesn't cover all developing countries, but with tropical forest countries like Brazil, Indonesia, Central Africa, like Congo, Norway every year provides roughly 350 million euros to preserve the tropical forests, the rainforests, because the rainforests, they are the world's lungs, you might say. If we don't manage to save the rainforest, the tropical forest, we cannot combat climate change. Also, rainforests provide other important environmental services, such as biodiversity, clean water, and so on. I think it's crucial to save the tropical forest, and their cooperation between rich countries like the Nordic countries and the tropical
but how does that develop? How did you develop the relationship? Because it doesn't seem obvious that Norway is going to invest a lot in the tropical forest. How was that political relationship set up?
Well, we made a political compromise, I think, which almost all parties in Norway was behind before the Bali summit, the COP in Bali in 2008. That both the then government parties and the opposition parties agreed that saving the tropical forests was crucial to combat climate change. We're motivated, for instance, by the Stern review on climate change, which was published 1 year earlier, which pointed out that preserving the tropical forests was also the most cost-benefit way most profitable way to combat climate change was to save the tropical forests. And then since then, it's been a broad consensus in Norway that it's important to prioritize saving the tropical forests. And we also hope that other countries in the world, I mean, also now Germany and UK is cooperating with us in some of the projects in South America, for instance. And we hope more countries will follow.
Sweden?
Yes, Sweden have our Swedish Energy Agency has a lot of cooperation with developing countries, and we're also planning to increase our support to the United Nations climate aid, and I think that will be one important thing. United Nations have a key role here, I think.
Denmark?
Thank you. I very much agree that cooperation between developed and developing countries and also climate finance play a crucial role in the green transition. I think the Nordic countries are one of the biggest donors when it comes to both development assistance but also climate finance. I think one of the main points from the SDGs are stressing the importance that also the receiving countries, so the developing countries themselves, are actively trying to improve conditions on the ground. It could be collecting tax to get a higher revenue, but when it comes to climate finance, enabling environments are absolutely crucial. You have to break down barriers for private investments, because though development assistance and public climate finance is important, it will not solve the issue we have at hand. We definitely need the private investors on board, and that is also why we need developing countries to also do what they can in order to attract private investors.
Okay, we have a question here from this gentleman. Could you introduce yourself?
Bernard Vigneault, Tractebel Engineering, du groupe NG. Which contribution do you see in decentralized power generation, focusing on power issues in Nordic countries? Do you see a new share? Do you see it increasing much? And how? Which is the interest of decentralized solutions? We have talked about central heating, for instance. And certainly there is a future, but how do you see it?
Decentralized power solutions. Sweden.
It's a very, very interesting question, because it's happening so much in this area right now. But I think both the development of smart grids is a very important thing in this area, and also combined with smart solutions for your own to produce and consume your electricity. For example, with solar electricity, but I think we also can contribute with our system perspective when it comes to district heating. But the development of smart grids, it's a large interest all over the world right now, and it will grow very fast.
Smart grids in Helsinki, in Finland, generally?
Yes, smart grids are being developed in the new housing and business areas I just described. But a very interesting dimension to this is district heating versus heat pumps, individual heat pumps. Because in the city of Helsinki, 92%, estimated 92% of heated space within city limits is connected to the district heating network. But now especially people who are building detached houses or small apartment houses, they looking at individual heat pump systems, which are not connected to the district heating. And now it seems that people are now comparing the prices of individual heat pump solutions and joining the traditional district heating system. And
what kind of comparison are they getting? What's the current state?
Well, as far as I understand, some people are saying that in many cases it's cheaper to invest in an individual heat pump heating system for a new house than to connect to district heating. And this obviously sort of puts pressure on the Helsinki Energy Company, which is producing the district heat in a sort of cogeneration of heat and cooling and energy. But this is an ongoing conversation in Helsinki, certainly.
Any other examples from Iceland or from Denmark, smart grids, from Norway?
I think I very much agree with what's been said by Sweden and Finland here. I think we also see a technological revolution with the integration of information technology and energy technology into smart grids. I mean, where people can not only get any electricity from the net, but also provide. I think we really see a big technological change there, and I think a revolution from the previously very centralized power distribution into decentralized electricity systems.
Okay, I'll take one final question. Could you introduce yourself?
Kurt Eriksen, Velux. In the Nordic countries, people spend 90% of their time inside the buildings. And the reason that we use energy in the Nordic countries is to heat buildings. So I would like to learn if you have had any thoughts about optimizing the indoor conditions for people in the dialogue that you have had in your governments regarding future legislation.
Buildings being heated. Any tips from your different countries? Norway, once again.
No, I think it's what I also said before. I think it's a combination of better regulation for new buildings, because, as I said, new buildings will stand there for many decades, and I think it's important that we use the latest technology to do that, and at the same time create incentives for investing in existing buildings, like tax incentives or public finances, to motivate people to invest in electric efficiency in their private buildings, and the same comes to company when it comes to the office buildings.
Okay, fine. I have one final question, just as the Minister, Ségolène Royal, has just joined us. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, de votre présence. On peut l'applaudir très fort. Merci. Thank you very much indeed. Donc, voilà. There we are. The Minister would like to say hello to all the representatives of the Nordic countries who've been giving us some examples of the environmental policies from their different countries. Just before the Minister speaks, could I just ask you one sentence each, because we're a few weeks away from COP21. What would be the urgent thing that you think we have to do from all of your countries? One sentence each as we get near to December. Please be seated. And give us your urgent things just as we arrive at COP21. What would you say? From Norway.
I mean, I think we have, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, we're facing probably the most important international meeting in our generation, especially when it comes to environment. And I think it's crucial that we get a treaty in Paris that covers all countries, that for the first time we get a treaty which the whole world can be beyond, and everybody can agree that combating climate change is one of the most important political challenges we're facing in our time.
Okay, from Sweden.
Yes, I think that the Nordic example shows us that it is possible to combine economic growth with reduced CO2 emissions, and that postponing the transition is only going to be more costly. So Paris has to provide the right signals to avoid postponing.
Okay, final words from Finland, Helsinki, and then Iceland.
We must combine saving the planet with business and quality of life, period.
C'est très succinct, very concise, and from Iceland.
Yeah, I think we must now, like the French presidency is doing very well, engaging everybody. Everybody has to put their effort on the table. We must have all the emitters, major emitters, on board, and everybody, the developing countries must, of course, be the first one and take the role, the major lead in reducing.
Thank you very much indeed. We've heard many interesting things. Ségolène Royal, merci de votre présence. La parole est à vous. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je salue mes collègues de la communauté des pays scandinaves à moins de 50 jours de la conférence de Paris sur le climat. Donc c'est dire à quel point à la fois cet événement et puis votre réunion et votre débat sur les relations entre la Scandinavie et le changement climatique sont importantes. Cette table ronde nordique. D'ailleurs, vendredi, je pars pour le cercle arctique en Islande, où j'étais d'ailleurs il y a peu de temps. Et c'est vrai que ce sont des sujets absolument passionnants parce qu'on voit les effets du réchauffement climatique de façon absolument cruciale et même dramatique sur la disparition des glaciers en particulier. Alors je crois que le contexte est positif pour réussir la conférence de Paris sur le climat et je vois vraiment une mobilisation, une montée en puissance, un engagement, puisque d'abord les pays qui sont regroupés à l'occasion de cette table ronde, de votre table ronde, ont de très longue date, même défendu des positions exemplaires et ça fait très longtemps que vous avez coordonné vos enjeux climatiques. Et de ce point de vue, vous avez été dans vos pays des pionniers sur la prise de conscience du réchauffement climatique. On a aussi vu que l'Union européenne en général et puis tous les pays en particulier qui font partie au sens large du continent européen se sont puissamment engagés et je crois que vos pays ont joué un rôle tout à fait crucial parce que, comme je le disais à l'instant, votre engagement date de longtemps. Et bien avant que l'Europe plus au sud ne prenne conscience des effets du réchauffement climatique. Alors nous allons bientôt organiser bien sûr la conférence de Paris sur le climat. Il y a plusieurs enjeux. Il y a l'enjeu bien évidemment de l'accord qui se présente quand même dans de bonnes conditions puisque la plupart des pays ont désormais maintenant apporté leur contribution, leur INDC. Et contrairement à ce que l'on craignait au départ, on voit que d'après les calculs des organisations non gouvernementales et même des scientifiques et des climatologues, on voit que la traduction des engagements nationaux aboutit à un réchauffement climatique entre 2,5 et 2,7. Enfin, les calculs ne sont pas tout à fait terminés, mais on craignait que ça ne puisse dépasser les 3 degrés. Et on voit qu'on sera quand même en dessous des 3 degrés, ce qui n'est pas suffisant, parce qu'il faut être à 2, en dessous de 2. Mais on voit qu'il y a une dynamique qui, à mon avis, va s'accélérer. C'est-à-dire que même si à un moment on dépasse un petit peu, il va falloir arrêter des stratégies pour redescendre en dessous des 2 degrés. C'est d'ailleurs tout le sens des stratégies bas carbone. La France vient d'adopter sa stratégie bas carbone. Je l'ai fait adopter dans la loi de transition énergétique, je l'ai fait adopter par le Conseil national de la transition énergétique qui réunit l'ensemble des forces vives du pays, que ce soit les entreprises, les organisations syndicales, les ONG, les élus, les experts. Et nous avons récemment adopté, ils ont voté la stratégie nationale bas carbone. C'était un tour de force, d'une certaine façon, parce que la France, traditionnellement, considérait qu'ayant l'énergie nucléaire, qui n'est pas une énergie carbonée, finalement, elle n'avait pas d'effort à faire. Donc il a fallu vraiment engager l'ensemble des partenaires sur une autre vision du mix énergétique, ce qui a été fait avec la loi de transition énergétique, avec la baisse de la part du nucléaire, la montée en puissance à 32% des énergies renouvelables, l'accélération de la performance énergétique, notamment dans le domaine du bâtiment, et puis l'intégration de l'économie circulaire pour la première fois dans une loi française, appuyée sur un pilier auquel je tiens beaucoup, c'est la mise en mouvement des territoires. Donc ce que j'ai voulu faire, c'est articuler les enjeux globaux, bien évidemment, avec les engagements de la France sur la réduction de 40% des gaz à effet de serre, engager aussi les progrès européens. La France a beaucoup pesé pour que les INDC de l'Union européenne soient ambitieux, et ils le sont. Et ce n'était pas évident parce que les pays européens ont des modèles énergétiques très différents. Mais moi, je n'oublie pas que l'histoire de l'Europe s'est aussi construite sur l'histoire de l'énergie, puisqu'après la guerre, la paix est revenue avec le projet européen de communauté européenne à l'époque du charbon et de l'acier. Et on voit que c'est la question énergétique qui est finalement la question vitale. Sans énergie, il n'y a pas de vie. Sans énergie, il n'y a pas d'entreprise. Sans énergie, il n'y a pas de qualité de vie. Sans énergie, il n'y a pas d'éducation, il n'y a pas de culture. Donc la question énergétique est en fait une question majeure, non seulement de développement économique, mais aussi une question majeure de civilisation. Et on le voit très directement lorsque on arrive à équiper, par exemple, puisque c'est un sujet aussi que je porte le plus fort possible dans le cadre de la préparation dans la conférence de Paris sur le climat, je veux parler de l'avenir de l'Afrique. Et quand on voit, comme j'ai eu l'occasion de le faire, dans des actions de partenariat très directes et très en circuit court entre ma région, Poitou-Charentes, et la région de Fatick, les éclairages solaires que l'on a installés dans les villages, le premier impact, ça a d'abord été sur le travail des femmes, notamment sur les adductions d'eau, donc sur le travail agricole des femmes. Et le deuxième impact immédiat, ça a été sur l'éducation. Parce qu'à la nuit tombée, les enfants pouvaient venir en dessous des lampadaires solaires pour continuer à étudier. Et donc, la question de l'énergie, vous voyez, elle est au cœur de bien des sujets. Ce n'est pas seulement une question technique. Et c'est ça qu'il faut comprendre par rapport aux enjeux de la conférence de Paris sur le climat. Voilà, moi, je ne voudrais pas être plus longue. Je voudrais simplement venir saluer le travail que vous avez fait, vous saluer les collègues qui sont là, dire qu'on a besoin de tous pour réussir la conférence de Paris sur le climat, que cette conférence, non seulement, je le disais à l'instant, il y a bien sûr l'accord qui doit être un accord contraignant, il y a les engagements nationaux de chacun des pays qui sont en bonne voie, il y a les financements. La conférence de Lima qui vient de se dérouler s'est bien passée. C'était le ministre français Michel Sapin qui s'est bien battu à cette conférence pour que à la fois les engagements sur le fonds vert soient tenus, mais aussi les engagements sur les 100 milliards d'euros à mobiliser en 2020, et cela tous les ans après 2020, pour faciliter les transferts de technologies, pour faciliter l'adaptation des pays, soient mis en place, et pour éviter ainsi l'échec de Copenhague, où la plupart des pays les plus pauvres qui subissent le dérèglement climatique sans avoir les moyens de mettre en place les bases d'un autre modèle de développement à partir des énergies renouvelables, sont restés en retrait et se sont dit, nous, le compte n'y est pas. Par rapport aux enjeux qui sont les nôtres, par rapport à ce que nous avons subi, par rapport aux menaces qui pèsent sur nous, on veut bien faire un mouvement, mais il faut aussi qu'on ait les transferts de technologie. Et cela, je m'en suis rendu compte en faisant la tournée dans les pays africains de l'Afrique australe, où il y avait vraiment, où il y a à la fois une forte envie de s'engager, mais en même temps vraiment une exigence sur la clarté des règles du jeu et sur la possibilité d'accéder aux énergies renouvelables. Parce que c'est vrai que quand on regarde l'état du monde, on se dit comment est-ce qu'il peut y avoir autant de retard sur l'utilisation de l'énergie solaire, notamment dans les pays les plus pauvres de la planète. Enfin, il y a tous les enjeux sur les villes. Je crois que c'est un enjeu majeur. On voit d'ailleurs des stands à ce salon qui sont très importants sur la question du transport propre, sur la question des villes durables. Donc, je viens de lancer un projet en France, un appel à projet en France, non seulement sur les territoires à énergie positive pour la croissance verte, qui rassemble désormais les 3/4 du territoire national sur l'engagement des collectivités territoriales sur des actions de la croissance verte, mais aussi un appel à projet que j'ai appelé « Villes respirables ». 20 villes françaises viennent d'être sélectionnées pour s'engager de façon puissante et déterminée à la fois sur les transports propres, la performance énergétique des bâtiments, la lutte contre la pollution de l'air, la reconquête de la nature en ville, bref, tous les leviers d'action qui doivent permettre de régler les problèmes d'asphyxie urbaine, qui est, à mon avis, un des problèmes les plus graves à l'échelle planétaire quand on voit la situation des mégalopoles. Et dans la façon dont nous pouvons en effet régler les problèmes des mégalopoles, il y a là aussi des leviers de développement et de création d'emplois très importants. Pour terminer, je dirais qu'au fond, il y a deux façons de voir la conférence climat. Soit une vision catastrophiste, où l'on se dit, finalement, c'est tellement compliqué, on fait tellement peur aux gens, que les gens vont se recroqueviller, vont se dire, bon, bah, de toute façon, dans 20 ans, dans 30 ans, on ne sait pas ce qui se passera, donc profitons de la vie et continuons à consommer comme si de rien n'était. Soit, au contraire, on se dit, c'est vrai que la situation est grave, mais qu'en même temps, la capacité que nous aurons à répondre aux problèmes, c'est une chance. C'est une chance à saisir. Donc ça, c'est le volet, non pas béat, d'un optimisme béat, mais c'est le volet optimiste et volontariste qui conduit à l'action et qui conduit à l'intelligence humaine à se rassembler et à apporter des solutions, tout en créant à la fois du pouvoir d'achat, parce que réduire les consommations d'énergie, c'est redonner du pouvoir d'achat, de l'emploi, et enfin du bien-être, parce qu'on se rend compte, chaque fois qu'il y a un sujet d'amélioration de l'environnement ou de transition énergétique, c'est aussi une amélioration de la santé publique. Et enfin, n'oublions jamais que tout cela est lié à la question de la biodiversité. Il ne faut pas laisser en marge de la question énergétique la question de la biodiversité, parce que les deux sujets sont étroitement liés. Et je vais veiller pendant la conférence de Paris sur le climat que dans la semaine de l'action et dans l'Action Day, il y ait vraiment cette articulation entre la question énergétique et la question de la biodiversité. Car n'oublions pas qu'il y a 3 piliers d'action qui viennent des trois mauvais comportements humains à l'égard de la planète. C'est bien évidemment le climat, la transition énergétique, mais ce n'est pas que le climat. Vous savez, si on ne fait pas attention, on va donner l'impression finalement qu'il y a des solutions technologiques et qu'un jour ou l'autre, finalement, le technologique va résoudre les problèmes et que ce n'est pas la peine de faire des efforts. C'est totalement faux. C'est même assez dangereux de penser que la technologie va tout régler. Ce n'est pas vrai. Parce qu'il y a deux autres fléaux sur la planète qui sont d'une part le prélèvement inconsidéré sur les ressources naturelles, la déforestation, l'acidification des océans, la surpêche, etc., la destruction des espèces protégées, et donc l'épuisement des ressources naturelles, qui n'ont rien à voir avec le climat. Il y a le climat, mais il y a l'épuisement des ressources naturelles, qui aggrave d'ailleurs le réchauffement climatique, puisque quand on affaiblit l'effet puits de carbone de l'océan, on renforce le réchauffement climatique. Quand on procède à des déforestations massives, on renforce le réchauffement climatique. Quand on élimine la présence de la nature dans les villes, on renforce la chaleur dans les villes. Donc il y a un lien très étroit entre la destruction inconsidérée et le phénomène de prédateurs sur les ressources naturelles et l'aggravation du réchauffement climatique. Et le troisième fléau, c'est la pollution. C'est la pollution. Donc ça aussi, ça relève des comportements humains, des comportements industriels, des comportements agricoles, des comportements urbains. Et sur cette question-là aussi de lutte contre la pollution, il y a beaucoup de lobbies, il y a beaucoup de résistance. Et c'est là souvent que le fameux discours sur « mais ne vous inquiétez pas, on va faire des progrès technologiques qui vont tout résoudre et donc on peut continuer comme avant à produire de la même façon, à prélever de la même façon sur les ressources naturelles ou à polluer de la même façon parce qu'un jour il y aura les réponses technologiques », c'est faux. Donc il faut être extrêmement vigilant sur ces 3 sujets. Le réchauffement climatique et la question climatique, la lutte contre la pollution et la lutte contre la déprédation et la destruction des ressources naturelles. Et tout cela fait un équilibre global à l'échelle planétaire. Et à ces 3 sujets-là, nous devons apporter des réponses opérationnelles qui ont d'ailleurs un lien les unes avec les autres. Voilà le défi que nous avons à relever. C'est un défi magnifique, hein. C'est le défi du siècle. Et moi, je me réjouis de voir à la fois dans les contacts bilatéraux à l'échelle planétaire et dans les contacts multilatéraux comme celui que vous avez ici, qu'il y a vraiment une mobilisation extrêmement forte, quelles que soient les latitudes, quel que soit le niveau de développement économique des pays, une espèce de culture commune qui est en train d'émerger à l'échelle planétaire, un échange sur les connaissances scientifiques qui ont énormément apporté, puisque à Paris, vous savez, au mois de juillet, se sont réunis 2000 scientifiques du monde entier. C'était la première fois que ça arrivait avant un événement comme un sommet climat. Et ça a été extrêmement productif, ça a été absolument passionnant. Je vous invite d'ailleurs à retrouver sur les sites concernés le contenu de ces communications scientifiques, parce que je crois que c'est ça aussi qui donne de la profondeur et de la dimension aux actions opérationnelles que nous devons mettre en place. Voilà, merci de votre présence, merci de consacrer du temps à cette question majeure. Merci à nos amis nordiques d'être rassemblés à Paris et pour ce débat. Et je vous donne rendez-vous à très bientôt, à la fin du mois de novembre.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre. Thank you to all of the representatives from Denmark, from Norway, Sweden, from Finland and from Iceland. Ladies and gentlemen, just to tell you that you are now invited to the opening and the visit of the Nordic Pavilion, which is at C34 in this room. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much indeed. And tack så mycket, I think you say in different Nordic languages. Thank you very much indeed.